There's a big sign from the Rutgers stats with Ace Bailey that shows why he might be a really good player, and it's not for what you think. Let's talk about it. It's the Hoops Nerd Show. All right, guys, before we get into it, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel. All right, so I had heard some rumors about this with Ace Bailey, and I wanted to look into it. And it's very clear that Ace Bailey has something to his game that does not get talked about enough, that shows why he is going to possibly be a really impactful player, and probably sooner than we think. And a lot of you would probably think, oh, it's probably the offensive game. Maybe with more spacing, he's going to be able to score in different ways. Very possible, but we didn't really see a lot of that from college. What we did see from Ace Bailey at college was good defensive numbers. So I found there were two sites that I found, one that I really liked. I think it's called evanmaya.com. You can go and look that up. You can go also, if you want to, just look up on-off lineup stats on Google and you'll find it. But anyways, the first thing that evanmaya.com talks about is just the offensive efficiency numbers. He has different offensive efficiency numbers. We're not going to go too deep into it just because I don't think anyone cares about listening to me just read numbers. But the number one offensive player with a 3.9 OBPR, that's the advanced stat they use, was Dylan Harper. Number two, Ace Bailey, 2.79. Not very far behind Dylan Harper, who I think everyone considers a much more polished offensive player at this point. Still shows how good Dylan Harper was, and also we should expect that those were the two best players on the team very clearly. But then so we're seeing what we're supposed to see there, Dylan Harper. But the thing that gets really exciting for me is when you look at the defensive side of the ball. Defensive BPR from this evanmaya.com has Ace Bailey as the number one defender. And by far, he has like a 1.66, whatever that means. The player to follow was not Dylan Harper. You don't actually see Dylan Harper, and he was fourth on the team in defensive efficiency on a very bad Rutgers team. That is really interesting to me, that Ace Bailey was far and away the best defensive player on that team. Their plus minus was better when he was on the floor. And the thing that gets me the absolute most excited is the adjusted team defensive efficiency when Ace Bailey is on the floor. Basically, like, who was the best? How did the team do when this player was on the floor, and how was their efficiency? Ace Bailey far and away had the best defensive efficiency on the team. When he was on the floor, Rutgers was much better defensively, and that's what gets me excited. The thing that Utah needs more than anything is not necessarily scoring. Utah can score the ball. Do they need to get better? Yes. But what Utah was so bad at last year, and what they're trying to build with this team, is defense. And when you see these stats from this really bad Rutgers team and how good they were defensively with Ace Bailey on the floor, it's really exciting. It tells me, and this could be just Ace Bailey's the biggest, most athletic, most physically gifted player on the team, which is very true, to be honest. And if he just plays hard, then he's going to affect things in a good way. But this shows that he did. And so that's really exciting. And I think it really should change a little bit about how we should think about Ace Bailey. Obviously, everyone talks about Ace Bailey, the mid-range game, the Dirk fadeaway free throw line jumper he was hitting during Summer League, the size. But what we really need to be thinking about and watching is the defense. I went to go see one of those games in person, obviously watched the second one on TV with everyone else. The thing that stood out the most to me was just how big and long Bailey was. The reports about him being shorter than everyone expected, I think, were super overblown. But then with him at that size, 6'8", 6'9", whatever he is with shoes on, who cares? He's really big when you see him, and he moves really fluidly on the defensive end. I was pretty surprised how well he moved over screens. And not only that, just moving over screens, he played with a lot of energy and effort and a motor. And that was kind of the report people were putting out there. You know, aside from all the garbage we were listening to about where he wanted to go and his player manager and all that stuff going on, what got lost in all of the shuffle and the noise of all that was that Ace Bailey is a player that plays hard, and he has a motor, and he's not a guy that you have to ask to play hard, and that he's a good guy in the locker room. His other players like to be around him, and we saw a little bit of that with his personality. He has a fun personality that you like to be around. And you know, watching those, and it's just 2 summer league games, obviously, but those 2 summer league games were pretty eye-opening for what he could do on the defensive end. I mean, he was efficient on the offensive end, which was pretty exciting, but on the defensive end, he was solid. And if he can play big, if you can have him play the 3 or the 4, depending on what lineups you have on the floor, we saw him get those weak side, like some eye-popping blocks. And if you have him being a weak side shot blocker next to a rim protector like Walker Kessler, you can see how he can really impact the defensive end for the Utah Jazz once he figures everything out in a huge way. Obviously, this all depends on him developing to the next level. Can he develop as a player and become more than what he is? That's what makes the superstars in the league. Do they take what they have, grow, and become much more than what was expected? And from what we're seeing here with the motor, the defensive impact, Ace Bailey, we should probably start thinking of him as a 2-way player. Everyone talks about the offense, the tough shot making, you know, the 3-point shooting and all those things, and what everyone's going to be watching on the offensive end. From what I'm seeing here and what we saw in Summer League and just the impact he had on the floor, we might have a really nice 2-way player, which is something Utah needs. And we know that's what they want. Drafting players like Taylor Hendricks when they did at 9, 2-way player. Ace Bailey, Walker Kessler is likely going to get some sort of contract this summer. We'll find out. He's eligible and it still hasn't happened, so it makes me wonder what's going on. But Utah is now starting to build a core of 2-way players. You can see it even with the Cody Williams pick, and we'll see how well he turns out. He played much better in Summer League, by the way. Who knows? He might be just turning into the player Utah hoped he would be. But another long, athletic, 2-way potential player. You can see what Utah's building here. Long, athletic, 2-way players, Cody Williams, Ace Bailey, Taylor Hendricks. They're going to keep drafting those guys. That's what makes this upcoming draft extremely interesting. What kind of player will Utah draft in that draft, depending on how they fall? I know we've got a whole season ahead of us, but things are going to get really interesting, really exciting, and I'm excited to watch those first defensive possessions from Ace Bailey, and I think that's how he's going to earn more time on the floor with Will Hardy. All right, guys, that's all I got today. I just wanted to share that. I thought it was exciting. I also wrote about it on SLC Dunk if you want to go there. Thank you so much to all the subscribers, especially to the members. If you'd like to support the channel, just hit join. And shout out to all the All-Stars, guys. Guess what? It's September. We're close. Very close. Training camp this month, I believe. All right, guys, I'll talk to you next time.